welcome to the Inner Shift podcast. We have one of our partners with us today who's been with us since the very beginning. Laurel Gillespie is going to talk about compassion, about pressure, about the nature of a high-profile job, and basically what this podcast is about is how we all get together and survive and thrive. So I think we all have our coffees.
You got it. I just chugged mine right before the show
I
because
know because it's important. So Laurel Gillespie is the CEO of the Canadian Hospice and Palliative Care Association and a community champion. Laurel, welcome officially. You've been helping us plan this for quite some time, but welcome.
Thank you so much, ladies, for having me here. I'm so excited.
It's a good time to get together. It's a good excuse that we can just get together and hang out.
Yeah, we miss you, and we're really looking forward to having you come back to Canada at some point, Kim.
I'm on my way home. This country is getting a little wacky. So I'm on my way home, and for those that don't follow along, I am in the Blue Ridge Mountains at a truck stop where I spent the night. I have been on the road for 6 months, traveling, and I don't mean to be advertising. They're not sponsoring, but I am at a what they call a TA truck stop in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So that's why I'm sitting in my car.
but you look so cozy. Buddy was there a minute ago. He was
Yeah,
hanging. He knew
here's
that we needed buddy power today.
He never misses a show. There he
Hi,
is.
buddy.
He never misses a show. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's nice and sunny there. It's snowing here in
Yeah.
Ottawa.
We
Yeah.
don't want that. No, we don't want that.
No.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh, Laurel, we're so happy to have you, and I want to learn more about you. I know a little bit about you, and I want to know a little bit more about your story. Kim, where do you think we should start today?
Well, yeah, let's just start with what you do for a living because it's a big job. It's a lot, and there is a very significant need in Canada to deal with hospice and palliative care, and you've been on the front line of that battle. So why don't we just start with what it is that you've dedicated your career to?
So that's a great question. Is kind of like, how did I end up working in hospice and palliative care? Never in a million years would somebody have said, that I'd be sitting in this position today. The reasons why I became so interested in this important topic that literally involves every single human being that walks the surface of this planet, but yet how we regard the whole process of death and dying, which is going to happen, and we kind of turn a blind eye to it. We don't make it a prioritization in our lives to really think about what that looks like for ourselves, and what our wishes might be when we reach that point, and who do we want in our circle of care with our families, our chosen families and loved ones. Um, and it wasn't until my own dalliance with being sick, really sick, that it made me think about, oh, I'm only 38 years old at this point, and maybe I'm not going to pull through. So I decided in the latter half of my career to focus my time and energy on ensuring that all Canadians, regardless of where you live or lack of a permanent address, have access to high quality, timely access to palliative care. And it's a tough sell. Let me tell you, it's a tough.
And can I just want to follow up on something else that you did that I found amazing because this is a show by women for women, is you also cast a light on when people need help and support and care. The vast majority of the people who become those caregivers are women. So then, Amy likes to talk to me about what is it, Amy? The bologna in the sandwich is that you get sandwiched on both sides. But in hospice and palliative care, the majority of people who are dealing with that with a loved one are women. And so they're getting extra pressure.
Exactly. And men are stepping up. They're starting to step up. I think, the ones that are those good supporters are those really, equal partners. I still believe they're out there. That's a whole other topic.
I was gonna say, really?
But I think I hear stories about how men are really stepping up for their families. I can give an anecdote about one particular gentleman who was his caregiver to his mom for years. And that impacted him in a significant way. But really, when it comes down to it, you're absolutely right, Kimothy and Amy. The statistics right now in Canada are 1 in 4 Canadians are also caregivers, 1 in 4. And that's predicted to be 1 in 2 by 2030. That's less than 5 years. It's like 4.5.
Right.
Yeah. And not only is it, so I was caught in that sandwich generation that Amy talks about, the bologna sandwich, and it, yeah, sometimes it's just a wish sandwich. You wish there was something in the sandwich to support you because you're so tired and burnt out. But I also, in my first journey as a veteran caregiver, my mother-in-law lived with us. She had Alzheimer's. She was a wanderer, so she couldn't be left alone. My twins were 9 years old. My youngest was 6. And I was a naval officer wife, so I didn't have family in the Ottawa area, but my family would often travel by train from the Maritimes or elsewhere to come and support me when I needed it the most. But back to those numbers about 1 in 4, and that 1 in 4 Canadian right now is predominantly women our age. Amy, you're younger. God bless you.
Much younger.
Much younger, but so wise, so much wiser. No, it's predominantly us in our highest earning years where we're trying to juggle all these different things and meet the needs of others. And I can speak to it right now. I've lost myself again. I've really lost after so many years of being that caregiver role, whether it's your children, whether it's your significant other, whether it's, the kids are now grown up. I went through my own illness and had to take care of self while being a caregiver. And now even, I can see myself in some aspects of my life today being the youngest of 8 children, being a pseudo kind of caregiver. My eldest sister, has stayed with me a few months. Not my sister that you just met. She takes care of me, actually. She's my caregiver right now. But yeah, you find yourself with children, whether it's, aunts or uncles or parents or grandparents. And even younger kids today are becoming caregivers in their youth to take care of maybe a sibling with special needs or helping that parent that's sick. So it affects everybody. And we're under-recognized, overworked, we're exhausted, and we're tired, and we're trying to juggle all of these things. It's so tough.
I did a panel recently, and I had a couple of things to add on, Laurel, is that, I did a panel and it's with university students, and, I'm Mrs. Eldercare at this point. It's like, that's where my world is, right? That's my book and all that stuff and caregiving and whatnot. And it was interesting because they were I had a lady come up to me and try to connect that dot, right? It's like, do I get your book or not? Like, what's it about and whatnot? And I had to not spin it. I had to highlight the fact that I have worked with many grandchildren who are either caregivers or helping with the caregiving. And you could see the look just change. And then she started talking about her grandparents, right? Oh yeah, we did this and this is, and I think it's important that we highlight the fact that it's, we talk about sandwich generation, we talk about caregiving and stuff. And I think that our younger generations haven't quite put themselves there unless they're in direct contact that minute, unless they're directly doing it. And I feel like they have so many resources, they think differently, they get things done differently than different generations. And I think, I'm always trying to empower this generation to say, you can make a difference. You need to educate yourself on this. And the other point is that I talk a lot about how to have the talk, and no one wants to talk about death and dying. In fact, I'm pretty sure they think they're going to die because of the conversation, right? And it's like, so have you come across these folks that are just like, no, I don't want to talk about it? And it's, how do you have any, nuggets of wisdom of how you would help educate these folks. I talk about how to have the talk and how to get that going. But in your field, very specifically, people are terrified unless they are thrust into that situation. And as professionals, we are like, please, please plan, please do a plan, think about it. But most of the time, people are like, no, I'm not planning.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Amy. In my professional work with CHPCA, we're just wrapping up a beautiful new project called Advanced Care Planning. We've been doing it since 2008. And we just come up with iterations of it that are fully accessible for those with neurodivergent issues or other physical or non-visible disability, to make it as physically accessible to as many people as possible. And when you're starting these conversations, there's prompts throughout this whole new guide, and they're available for free. You download them on our website. I can tell you the time to not start having these conversations is when you've received a diagnosis or you're in crisis, either a family member or yourself. And I can only speak to myself in this perspective of, it was a holy shit moment of, I forgot to ask, are we allowed to swear or not? Or, yeah, it's like,
yeah.
Swearing's encouraged.
no, it was a
Oh
holy
yeah.
shit moment. I was 38 and it was like, what do you mean I have a 5-year, 20% chance I'm going to be here in 5 years? How did this, like, that's not the time to start thinking of it when you're in complete chaos mode. So I encourage people to participate by using these tools that are available, but it's still hard getting the message out because it's an uncomfortable subject. But even like, I find the easiest conversations are when you're in the car, because you're driving and you're focused on forward and situational awareness. You don't have to sit and have that awkward stare looking at each other. One could be looking out the window and just say, hey, did you hear about this accident and this happened? Like, what would you want to have done? Or like, what would you want to have happen to you if that were you? And then to say, by the way, like, do you know, like, if you're in an emergency or you needed immediate help, pardon me, excuse me, who are the 3 people that you would call? Well, I'm going to call Kimothy or Amy because they're my besties.
I was gonna say,
Like,
yeah,
hey, okay, so usually one of those 3 people that you would be calling in a moment of duress is going to be your substitute decision maker, right? Like, it's not as complicated or as uncomfortable as what people think, but the wrong time, there is a wrong time to do it, I think, and that's when you're in crisis mode. Your head's not thinking clearly. You're just all over the place and not focusing on what your values are, what your wishes are. And this is a document too, that it's like an evergreen thing. It changes continually. It's like life planning. We plan our estates, we plan our financial, we plan, to buy a bigger house or downsize, or we prepare to buy different cars and we research it. But when it comes to our personal health care and what would happen to us if we got sick one day, we don't think about it. And it's so critical.
I think that
and we're going completely, not that we have a script for this show, but we do have some bullets that we want to cover in an hour. But I'm gonna jump in because I know this story and I know you've been public about it, so I hope I'm not advancing something that you don't want to talk about. But what amazes me about you is like 2 things that I didn't even tell Amy this one. A, you survived very aggressive cancer, and B, you ran against Pierre Polyev, who wants to be the prime minister of this country. And so you didn't let shit knock you down. You got right back up, and then you became a champion for people who are dealing with these things. And in fact, because of you, I got the updated will thing that you recommended about a year ago, because I was going to drive full time and that has inherent risks. Um, how did you come out of fighting for your life and then wanting to fight for other people's lives?
Yeah, and more of the story behind that, Timothy, of walking away from a 22-year-old marriage when, after I was sick, I wasn't perfect physically anymore. And that was just a whole disaster. And I went back to school and I thought, like, I'm in my late 40s. Like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And it really became a matter of, I don't need the fancy house. I don't need the fancy car. I want to do something that's going to have an impact on as many people as I possibly can make a difference to. And this was one of those subjects because I had to consider palliative care at one point, given that what at that time was considered a terminal diagnosis, where really was my holy shit moment. And what do I want to do? What is it that I want my legacy to be beyond being a mother and a wife and, my activities? I want to make a difference to help other people. And I think that's just been an essential core part of my makeup of who I am as a person, and wanting to give back to others. And that was the whole reason why I ran against Pierre, because I had a son with autism. And as a 27-year-old go-getter at that age was when I ran against him in Nippy and Carlton. And it was a really great experience, although I would have made a terrible MP because I'm too outspoken and wouldn't be able to toe the party line, but I would love to be a senator one. That's
I think we need more of those. We need a lot more of those, particularly at this point in time. But I mean, you drop these things into the conversation, like your son with autism, and that you left a challenging marriage, and that you were considering your plan for palliative. Like you drop these in as if in some cases, some people have one of these in a lifetime, major difficult things, and I'm just in awe of you. I'm just in awe of you.
ditto ditto the same. And the magic really happens, Kimothy, like when you started bringing this group of women together. We're all equally superstars in our own rights, but I am going to start writing my book. I am officially on sick leave, as I mentioned earlier, and start telling some of the story, because I think about it and it's like people I just share some little tidbit, not necessarily the whole story because it's a lot, and they just go, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah, you can't make this shit up.
Holy shit.
You can't make this up.
And
like,
and when you went back to school, because you glossed over this, you went back for your MBA.
I did at 45 as a single mom. Yeah, and my youngest daughter is my biggest supporter. I'm estranged from my two other children due to the divorce and the weird psychological behaviors behind my, I don't, I always feel weird, this ex-husband. It was the ex-husband. It was the best 250 pounds I ever lost. But I mean, I digress. My whole life changed because I finally, I think for the first time in my life, put myself first. And, being married at 22, and I didn't even know who I was anymore. It's like, who am I? What brings me joy? And through all those experiences of caregiving, you lose yourself. And so now that I'm feeling burnt out and I've been doing XYZ and all these things, I need to pump the brakes.
And Amy, is that common that people lose themselves in caregiving?
It's really common. And I was gonna highlight something as well. Like you mentioned burnout, and I mean, that's again my world, right? We talk about it all the time with our caregivers, and I talk to my team as well a lot about compassion fatigue, because I've had to look into these different things that contribute to the burnout, and people that work in helping professions like yourself, right? Like how do you keep going? How do you add on the pieces, looking for the legacy, looking for making a difference, getting out of bed and putting pants on in the morning? How do you keep moving forward in this industry that you're in? And I assume it's not without taking on that compassion fatigue and stuff, but do you have ways that you've kind of made, like boundaries and different things like that, to try to preserve yourself so that you don't lose yourself, because you have big goals, because you have big dreams, but you're doing big things? And as another professional who has different goals, but I dream big as well, it's sometimes hard to stay out of that gutter, taking on everybody's stuff. It's like it's palpable. You can just feel it on your skin sometimes.
That's really it's really interesting, and I'll be very raw about this. It's been probably coming up on a year, and if you ask my senior leadership team that I work with, who are just stellar and so supportive, and for the last year I've been dealing with health issues like migraine headaches, not sleeping at night, gastrointestinal issues, I have a small heart problem from chemotherapy treatment from my portacath. And this entire year I've been on that roller coaster of, is it back? Is it back? Is that cancer back somewhere? But I've had like both my shoulders operated on since then, because it was like, oh, this has got to come out of there. And you think about, your mind goes to those things quite often with being sick. And the fact of the matter is, when we come down to it, is that I'm exhibiting all these different health symptoms, but I'm happy to say it's not cancer that's back. I'm just burnt out. And when I really started looking at the symptoms of it, it's like, I really am burnt out. And I don't think I've ever been burnt out like this in my life. But my senior leadership team, one of the most beautiful things that they said to me that made me feel that I know I'm doing a good job is they said, Laurel, and they were encouraging me to take some time last fall, but me thinking I just need to wait to get more test results back to make sure.
Go through it.
Yeah, go through the motions of it. And they said, Laurel, show yourself the same compassion that you would show us as your team members.
Oh.
Please show yourself the same kindness that you would demonstrate to us if it were us in your shoes. And that was like, I really am truly blessed to have be surrounded by the best people possible. But it's caught up to me and I have lost myself. It's like you have to sit back and go, like, what do I really like to do in my spare time? I don't go to the gym anymore. I don't even like cooking anymore. These are the things I love to do. And it's like, you're so exhausted, you're so tired. And yeah, I had to look down. I do have pants on. You always have to find your sense of humor in this stuff, right?
Have to.
But yeah, I think
But is this, Amy, is this common? Like, what happens when the caregiver becomes the burnt out person? Like, what happens to the family structure? And just so all of our viewers and listeners know, is that I'm a big believer in family of choice. So it's not always your biologicals. Um, some of the people that I love the most don't have a single shared cell with me. But what happens when you actually, let me rewind that a little bit, in that when you break, because I have broken after my dad died, I was just a big fat mess. But when you break, but also you haven't set up structures for yourself, for the person that is going to catch you,
yeah.
because I felt like I failed. So that set off a whole chain reaction in the family, the friend group, the whatever, is that, well, who's going to take care of me when I fail and when I break? And your book, which we should say, Breadcrumbs, bestseller,
Award-winning.
award-winning, amazing. But you also walk the walk every single day in your company. So what happens when the caregivers don't take care of themselves?
I would tell you, as a point blank statement, all hell breaks loose. Just shit crumbles everywhere. And I think that that's why, as professionals in very aligned industries, that's why you hear fill your cup, put your oxygen mask on, and everybody's, says that's a cliche. And it's like, it's a cliche for a reason. It's like, that's what it is. I mean, you need to be able to Laurel's point previously, you need to be able to think about this stuff when you're not in a crisis. And because
Right.
finding the extra things, the mental space just isn't there to put together stuff, right? And so you're going into burnout. I mean, burnout can be for a variety of reasons and a variety of depths. Like, it's not just like I learned the other day, something called flame out, when it's just like your life's on fire, essentially, right? Like, it's like you got nothing, right? And to Laurel's point, I also got to a point where it's like, I don't really want to cook, right? And it's like, Mike takes care of that. Sorry, you can hear Sigmund in the background, because I'm also dealing with a sick dog at the same time. Things pile in and you never know, right? And so it's like putting the cooking away, having Mike do it. You need to understand, I think, more than anything, that anything can hit you at any point. And so if you are piling up these situations or complications that are going to contribute to burnout because you're not taking the extra time for yourself and you're not really having a look at like what happens if, then you need to have an understanding, educationally, I think, that once you're in burnout, things don't stop happening, right? Like to your point, Laurel, like I am kind of running that way as well. I've had a number of situations that I'm digging myself out of at the moment in mental health and things like that. And then I get home and Sigmund's like limping on 3 legs, right? And it's like, I can't. Like it was just like that. It's like you don't know when the cup is just like filleth over, right? And you don't know when it's going to hit. And so that's why we always talk about planning.
Yeah,
And sorry, Laurel, this is a question that I wanted to follow up with you about because I think a lot of us, and I think all 3 people in these little boxes here, when we have grown up to be caregivers and take care of everything and be high performing and get good grades, and I didn't go back to school, but uh, we don't have the tools. Like, I didn't know how to take care of myself. I knew how to take care of other people, but I didn't know how to take care of myself. So, Laurel, how did you get the tools to listen to that colleague and then go on a different path of learning how to take care of yourself? Like, how do women do that? Because I mean, here we talk the shit out of shit, and it's okay to, you know, talk about your current situation, but how do we redirect when we're high performers?
For me, and I would never speak for anyone else, there's that lovely little trick that we play called compartmentalizing, right? So
My
when,
therapist loves when I do that. They're like, and then you put them on a shelf, and then
prior,
the boxes start to crack, and then they break onto the one below, and then all of a sudden you've got a shit mess on the floor, right?
and we just say, okay, I'm just gonna park that for now and I'll deal with it later.
Right.
It sets yourself up for disaster. So
Mm,
compartmentally, my brain was so full. I had to say, okay, what are the things that I can unpack that I thought were big things, but aren't really big things anymore because it's been parked in there for 10 years. I need to just empty that little drawer and free up some space so that my own mind and sense of what makes me me isn't filled up with all of these little drawers of pain and sorrow and
mm,
grief and struggle, and just let it go. Just to be able to decompress and get rid of some of that junk that's floating around in there. That's that little voice that's like, oh, well, you shouldn't try to do that because there's this, and this. And then you, I don't know if that's making any sense to you guys, but it's like sometimes you try to have to talk yourself out of doing good things that are healthy for you because you feel like, oh, well, I can't, or you put these obstacles. It's because our compartmentalization, we don't have the space to allow the new beauty in. So I would say make sure that you're compartmentalizing your cleaning shop, your cleaning house. Try to let some of that go so that you create the space from within mind and within your heart and within your body to allow grace, compassion, self-worth, self-esteem, confidence. You've got to create that space because once it's too full, you just get stuck. So I had to learn that I got to empty these boxes so that I can free up and fill them with the things that bring me joy. And as stressful as my job is, you are the CFO, you are the COO, you are the head of HR, you are the fundraising, and that you're all of it in a small not-for-profit charity. And during these times, it's insane. But just giving yourself the grace and the compassion to fill your cup, but fill your boxes in your head without these stressful challenges and traumas. It's time to move through some of that trauma, let it go and be free, to open yourself up to accepting in what is possible. And that's kind of what I'm going through right now, is like what are those things that I feel completely healed from? Like we're talking like the PTSD and major depressive disorder and all of those things dealing with it. It's time to just, you got to move on. But sometimes it takes a really long time to get to that point where you feel like, okay, I got to deal with this stuff, because if I don't, I'm slowly dying inside because I don't know who I am anymore. It's kind of weird, but for me, you know when you know. And I don't think there's any like predictable, do this, and this, and that'll get you there. It's a journey of self-reflection and a journey of how worthy we are as those strong women to provide that leadership for generations to come. But you're right, like there is no playbook for this shit. There is no playbook, right? Oh, when this happens, try this. There's tons of self-help books out there.
I would say, to add to that, Laurel, too, is that when you're sorting through, it's like, thank you for sharing that. Like sorting through what's the garbage, what do I got to deal with? Like, there's no timelines. It might take you longer or shorter or whatnot. And I would tell you that some of the other stuff that tends to be helpful is to stop thinking of yourself, because you're often a caregiver in some respect as well. Stop thinking that you're the only one that can do certain things, right? So set up those boundaries. Even as easy for me, like I hate grocery shopping, and I know it sounds like a very, very minor thing, but going into a large grocery store gives me anxiety. I don't like the big spaces. It's just who I am. And so like ordering online and picking it up gives me, like, I could do it for a week and just add to my cart and all that stuff. And not only does it help with, that extra stuff, because you have to consider where your nervous system is too, right? And it's like, I don't want to put myself in that environment, because I'm going to have to deal with me later. And it's like, I'm very introverted, right? And so like, sure, my husband will go shopping or whatever, and sometimes he just uses it as an outing to get out of the house, right? And you do you, but and he doesn't mind. But those little tiny things add up, because the reverse in this, in this example, is making a list, maybe coordinating with someone else that needs also to have their groceries done, like a loved one or whatnot, driving, navigating the home or the grocery store, coming home, putting away stuff. Like all of these pieces they can be time consuming. And so it's like, start looking at, things that you're doing in your life and task them down or hand them out, because there's lots of people generally willing to help, or at least a couple that are generally willing to help, or lean into tech to help, right? And do the grocery orders and things like that. And I think that that is one of the things that I find that our female caregivers have a really large problem with, right? And I have a problem with it too, right? Like it has to be done in a certain way, or this is the way I do it. And you just have to let go of that shit. And it's like, it doesn't really matter how the groceries get done, as long as the food is in the house and the kid is fed, right? And so just letting go of those things that are kind of like on the fringe while you're working on your own stuff, and whatever you can handle is whatever you can handle, right? And it's like, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're being lazy. It doesn't mean you're not, doing whatever. It's in the space. This is what you can handle, and you own it, and you say, I can't handle anymore. Everything else is out.
Precisely. But it doesn't come easily or naturally. It's not intuitive.
Oh,
right? You got to work through that. So I'm happy for you that I'm just trying to start out the grocery delivery thing now, because put me in a Walmart, I'm going to last about 3 minutes.
yeah, it's gold. Just even having it done and picking it up, right? Like just order online and get it done. And it's like, I don't have to deal with it. I pick
Oh
it
my
up.
God. I mean, after the car accident, I became the ding, ding, ding. Because I didn't have to figure out, how am I going to walk to the grocery store, which was right next door to where I lived, with a cane in winter. I could fall, like it, I did fall once. I've got this like lovely bump on my nose because of that. But one of the things that um really resonates with me is, those are all forward motions, what you can do now. What I have been struggling with is forgiving myself. Because I fell on my face hard, like hard. And I don't mean when I broke my nose, I meant when I just fell apart at the seams. And one of the biggest challenges for me, because I would give this advice to both of you, is you need to forgive yourself. I mean, you weren't at your best. There's a great big C song about, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not at my best. And I love Great Big C, but I have a really hard time with, like both of you, being raised to be high performers. And then I got to a point where, like, getting out of bed was difficult. Getting motivated to do anything was difficult. And I still struggle with forgiving myself, but I would give it to both of you in a heartbeat. But I failed. And like it gets in your head. And with caregivers who think, okay, well, now I'm going to get Instacart. I don't want to promote any particular company,
Mm.
but I initially saw that as a failing. I can't even get my own effing groceries. I'm getting them delivered to the building next door. So that I think is something that women really struggle with, is empathy for ourselves, forgiveness for ourselves. So I'm wondering how the two of you work through that path, walk on that path, I guess.
I'm trying to remember who said it to me first, and I
I
can't
don't know.
I don't remember who it was. It's just give yourself grace. It's part of that forgiveness, but give yourself grace to say, not everybody's perfect. And it's okay when you fall down and you skin your knee, with the idea that eventually your knee will heal and you'll get up and you'll dust yourself off and you'll fluff up your hair and you'll be good to go again. But sometimes it's a little more complicated than that. And we have to be able to not only be able to forgive, but just give ourselves grace that we're human. We're not superhumans, although
Damn you.
one could argue. There are a select few of us. But honest to God, like we're all the same, but some of us struggle more than others. But we don't talk about this, Kimothy, enough. I took the whole month of July, almost the whole month of July, at least 3 weeks last July. Do you know what I did? I slept. I put my blinds down. I got my dog out 4 times a day. I ate what I could and I slept. I was
Good.
rocking in my bed and it was like, that was how exhausted I was. And I was like, this is not okay. This is not okay. What am I? And I snapped out of it, but you have to work at it constantly.
I would tell you that, I mean, Timothy, I think that's why our relationship has grown so quickly, is because I feel like going through some of the stuff I'm going through is like you need, or what can help, you don't need it, but what can really help is having one other person in your life that has a narrative on your life that you can just be like adding pieces instead of retelling stories, and invest in the person. And so that it needs to be someone who has an understanding of what's happening, right? And so then because they come at it from a different point, right? It's like I have told multiple people about my own situation, and the ones that have an understanding of it can empathize, and we talk about different experiences and give me grace and validate what I'm saying. And then the other ones are as lovely and want to help, but they're more on the you should just be grateful for what you have and all that stuff, and that doesn't help whatsoever. And so aligning with that right person, or if you are lucky enough to have several, awesome. I have a very very small circle. And so just like aligning with that other person. But to your point, Laurel, from your July, example, I had a lot of stuff go down at the end of the year last year. In January, I was lucky if I could make it till noon every day working, and I just couldn't concentrate. And I am a high performer, and I was like, you know what? I am literally staring at my computer. Nothing's coming out. And so what's the point? And so I gave myself that grace, and I just went and watched some whatever's on TV. And it's just like, you know what? This is just where I'm at. If I want to pull out my laptop on my lap, I'll do it. If I don't, I won't. And I think that, Mike's been a big support for me because he's here as well. But as it's also an interesting dilemma, because I try to keep him as informed as possible so that he can understand what's going on because he's not as in tune. And so I update with him just so he knows. But like if I like disappear to like my safe haven or whatever, like I feel guilty still because like we have a daughter who's very self-sufficient, who can manage. Like they're all fine without me, but you
Yeah.
still feel guilty taking that time. And I've had to kind of come into a place where it's like, as I always say to my people, like you have to learn how to dance with guilt. It's going to happen regardless. You're going to feel guilty on both ends. It doesn't even matter. So I'm going to choose this way because I know how to fill my cup at this point. I know how to like take my nervous system down and all that stuff. And I'm going to feel guilty that I'm not in the same room and having some FOMO. But if I'm there, I'm going to feel guilty because I'm a space cadet and not participating. So I might as well just remove myself and try to fix it a little bit faster than just being in like an overwhelming scenario.
Mhm.
You know what? You ladies gave me a great idea that I think that we should do for a future show. So just, you know, let's flag this is um kind of the how-to of, I call it falling on your face, but it's not that. It's, there was a 2-week period where I barely got out of bed. When I realized that, 28 injuries later, my life was going upside down. I was, I don't mind sharing, I was drinking way too much, so that I could go back to sleep, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. And the one thing that somebody said to me, excuse me, is if you do one thing today, just one, have a shower or a bath, whichever one is your thing, right? Because I was disgusting. I like I just thought my life is over. I don't even know how to file out an insurance form. I can't focus on what the insurance company wants me to do and, et cetera, et cetera. And I will say that was, and maybe this is what our next show could be about, is if it's one little thing, have a shower, shave your legs. If you have to get back into bed right after, get back into bed. But you need one small thing. If it's go eat some celery, whatever, resonates in your world. But when you fight back from a pretty complete collapse, just look on the bright side. 5 years from now, you might get an insurance settlement.
Yeah.
Great.
I learned recently
Little tiny things.
about vibrational healing, and having a shower is one of those things.
Oh, is
Change,
it?
changing the vibration of the energy around you, and water helps to do that, is what I've
Oh,
been learning.
I did
And
not know that.
so I think that that's really valid, right? Like sometimes that's all you got. And I mean, you just feel much better when you're like clean and whatnot. But sometimes, you know, when I'm going through therapy myself as general, but just like step outside for a minute and like just breathe in the air, like very minute, or crack a window from your bed, like whatever it is, to just try to change the stagnant energy and airflow and things like that. And sometimes that's the only step you can take. And I think that all of us are here to say that's okay. Like that is like people are really too hard on themselves, all parties included, that we have to be rock stars all the time. And I would tell you that by the time you get to the burnout part, or to the part that we're talking about now, I would tell you that there was probably years and years and years before that that you're a total friggin' rock star. But right now, you don't have to be. And what I've learned from sharing my journey is that some people actually think I'm more of a rock star now because I'm being vulnerable and I'm showing them I'm dealing with this crap and this is how I'm dealing with it. And that's resonating for people. The same reason we're doing this podcast. It's resonating that we're calling it out and we're saying it's okay not to be okay. Let's not fake it anymore. Let's just talk about it and free the space up for others to see that people are publicly talking about it and it's okay that they're there too.
And actually, Laurel, that's why we wanted to have you on the show, because not only were you a contributor to the concept of building this show, but you're an inspiration, because if somebody who can run the Canadian Hospice and Palliative Care Association that deals with how to make it better for people to die. And you're the boss of that. And you are brave enough to say, I'm not okay. The weight of life has caused me to think about, I need a pause. That is an inspirational thing. And to me, that is a point of leadership. 100%, that's a point of leadership.
Yeah, I think it also sets the example for my team that I'm walking away from. And I think that's, so they made a decision.
Temporarily, not
Temporary,
forever.
yes, of
Temporarily.
course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they like closed me out of my emails and stuff. Like they know me that I'd be in there checking, like keeping an eye on things. They're like, Laurel, not this time. You're not going on it a couple of weeks and taking a vacation and then still working. They know me that well. They're like, just going to remove your access. It'll all come back when you're done doing what you need to do. But we're removing the temptation. And I was like,
shouldn't all organizations do that?
yeah, even when you're on vacation. I mean, you got my
Right.
cell phone if the house is on fire, and I really appreciated that. And I think then it makes me feel better as a leader because I aspire to be the kind of leader that I wish that I had when I was 25,
Yep.
30, and didn't. And it's really about showing compassion for others. The work's going to get done. There's lots of work to be done. It'll still get done, but I'm proud of my accomplishments. I just came back in February from 12 days of meetings at the World Health Organization's executive board meetings. And I was privileged to, through my work with the Worldwide Hospice Palliative Care Alliance, to give 2 interventions. And one was on caregiving and mental health, and the other was on caregiving and dementia. And these are topics like people are struggling all around the world. So yeah, when you're a leader and you can say, yeah, I got to put the swords down and, quiet the battle. I got to get off the front lines for a little while because I need a break. Yes, it takes brevity, but at the same time, it does take courage and you have to be a bit brave. But it's one of those points that you get to and you say, yeah, I have to put myself first.
Well,
If it matter for anything.
to be a leader, you have to.
And I need to do that. I need to prioritize myself for a change. And who have our nature, who just want to help, and who are strong empaths as well as high performers, it's tough to say, yeah, I really need a break. I really do need a break. I don't have cancer. I'm not sick. I'm just burnt out. And just that in of itself like makes me feel good. It's just like, okay, thank God I'm not sick. But if I continue on this pattern, I'm going to get sick again. And no job, I don't care what you do for a living, no job is worth investing so much of your body, mind, and soul into is worth making your body sick. And my body's been screaming at me for almost a year. I don't know if that's helpful to anybody else, but no job is worth that. Love what I do, proud of what I've accomplished. Can I have a greater impact? I don't think I'm finished yet. I'll leave it at that, but it's hard to walk away because I felt like I was letting my team down. When in fact, my working and functioning the way that I've been is not helping my team, it's dragging them down with me. So that having to step back and trusting them to give me the time to go away and be whole again, I couldn't ask for anything more. And then I'm proud of the team that I've surrounded myself with for that, to have that.
Amazing what you just said, because this is a show on mental health, right? And what you said about getting your body back to being healthy and not being sick, as someone who's had anxiety, depression, and PTSD, sometimes the body isn't going to cooperate if the mental health isn't in place.
I would say that's also how you are a leader. That's how you show up. You have to take that first step. That's what leaders do. And by showing them, okay, I mean, being burnt out, being overwhelmed, all that, that's just life. I mean, not to diminish it. All of us are dealing with it, right? And to be brave enough and strong enough to be like, I am struggling. I am going to put my trust in you as my team to handle this, which gives them extra, right? Like that gives them an extra confidence, that you have confidence in them, and
Yeah.
you are going to take some time to recalibrate, that gives them permission to do it when they need it to.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that gets, you know what I found out with my team is that gives them permission to take care of you for a minute as well. Because
Yeah.
leaders need to be cared for as well. We're often quieter, we're doing. And that's why one of the reasons why it's so difficult for us to ask for that help. But let me tell you, the beautiful thing is when you ask for that help as a leader specifically, and your team is like, we got you. It's just like I'm almost tearing up thinking, because my team has had to do that for me recently, and it's like just
Yeah.
knowing that they're going to keep our shit afloat, they're going to keep our clients and families happy, and they're giving me space to deal with what I got to deal with. Really, it does fill my cup a little bit more. It helps to rejuvenate that for me.
It's a very high level
And
of respect.
Yes.
yeah, and
Human-
Amy, what you and I have talked about, and Laurel and I have talked about this in separate conversations long before this, is that there are also going to be people who don't come along for this ride.
No.
There are going to be probably several people in your life who are not comfortable with the fact that you're not the provider, that you're not the person that will solve everything. And that is a painful reality for a lot of people, is that when you change who you are, some people are not going to join you on the new path, and that's okay. It
You
doesn't mean
gotta,
it needs to be a fight or drama or anything like that, but it's like, I wish you well, but I'm going over here now because I need to do this to save myself.
Mhm.
And they're not going to come with you on the trip.
that's okay.
And that's okay.
There's another, like, just as we're kind of just to segue into that as well, there's all this pressure, right? I know I could see how men felt it, like for many, many years, as I had the privilege of staying home for a while, running my own little company on the side, but my husband being the main provider at the time. Um, you could see this sense of competitiveness, right? Well, I've decided I don't compete with anybody but myself, no more. But you get in these work environments as you're earning and learning your way to become in these leadership roles. So I always say, like, be careful what you wish for, because it's pretty friggin' lonely at the top. And I, like you, I have a very small circle of friends. Keep it tight, keep it close. But there's also that competing factor that if I don't keep up and I don't push myself, there's a 35-year-old right behind me who's maybe got a couple of kids, and she's willing to work the 16-hour days, and she's willing to work da 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 da. That we are all replaceable, but there's also, as you're coming into that leadership role, those who are chasing it behind you and want it bad.
But
Right?
don't you think, Laurel, for those people as well, and I'm on point with that, I agree. I think that there's always going to be that person, but I also think that I was gonna say breeding, but not really breeding. We're encouraging the next CEO, the next leader to burn out because they're chasing it so hard and they don't have their boundaries usually. They don't have it in their 16-hour days, 20-hour days, like 20, that's ridiculous, but like very, very long days constantly. And I get it because, a lot of us have been there, but also aren't we just encouraging them to hop on the same train that we're all on? It's just that, I look at the 20-year-olds. I'm not as young as you guys say I am, but I look at the 20-year-olds because I was just at the university, literally. And when I have the privilege of talking to younger generations, God, now I sound old. When I have the privilege of talking to younger generations, I think it's important that we educate as well as the women that are coming before them to say, you're enough, you're important. I understand the drive of getting up, getting up, getting up, but don't trade it for your own self-worth, self-care.
And don't tear apart the other women that are around you.
Don't step on all us getting up there either.
Exactly. Like,
Some of us are feisty and they don't expect it.
it's true, but we don't have to stop, like, the tearing down each other and that competition. Mean girls are always going to be out there everywhere, right? Little mean girls grow into big mean girls, and there's always going to be naysayers. but you just have to ignore them and move past. But we are trying to create that example for
Yeah.
tomorrow's leaders. And it doesn't have to be cutthroat. And yeah, I'm looking forward, particularly with just the millennials have changed, but like even working in the dynamics of so many different generations and how the thought process is, I'm really excited about the future women of tomorrow. I think they're going to be amazing,
Yeah.
but it's still
Well,
painful to watch
they're
them.
taking no shit. I mean, I admire that. They're like, we're not putting up with this shit, man.
Yeah.
I admire that, and I mean, Laurel, to your point, I would like to fuel that, because everything that the two of you are talking about is a structure that was built. I think I'm the oldest. It was built, the structure was built in the, suits kind of model, right? Like fight hard, blah, 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 blah. And then women,
At 6 o'clock.
yeah, and then women had to fight for entry into that. And
We've
then
been
we
fighting
had to
ever
fight
since.
to be seen like that. And I think, and the reason why we wanted to do this podcast, quite honestly, is no, no. That's just breaking people, and that's like, look where the world is at right now, and I do realize I'm sitting in the Blue Ridge Mountains on my way home. But this is not working for anybody. And women have that compassion, intellect, sensitivity, empathic abilities, that we need a whole new system.
Well,
Mhm.
and also it, like, to that point, it's not working for anybody, but when the matriarch falls, when we burn out, it's a ripple effect that no one wants to deal with. Like that ripples through, right? Families and friends and colleagues and stuff. It's like, it's not just like, it's not like in the wild when you get like sick and you just like go off quietly and die in a corner. Like we ripple the shit out of it, right? Because
Did think about that at one
everything,
point.
everything we are doing gets dropped. And you're just like, have fun, good luck. I'm gonna go to bed. And I think that it would do society better if we're all more supportive, if we're more understanding, if we understand that, you know, things that are coming up once people just like back out of roles and back out of family obligations and back out of life, it's not good for any of us, because if too many of us do it, which I'll tell you, with all of the baby boomers coming through and all that, and the 1 in 4 caregivers coming into 1 and 2, it's just getting worse. It's just going to get worse. And when all those women are like, F it, what the hell is going to happen? And I think that, as we usually say, now's the time to pay attention to it and make sure that things are running as best as you can for your life and fit you, because we only have one life right now. I don't know what happens afterwards, but we can only count on this one. And you got to understand that your life is important, and what you want to accomplish as a person is important and valid. And so, do you want to live in burnout for 40 years, or do you want to get the hell out of it, figure out what you want, strip away the people that don't understand, strip away the people that aren't coming on your journey, and live a friggin' awesome life?
And,
Yeah.
and actually, Amy, just because I know we're running out of time, but for me, finding the two of you, some of the other people in our group, finding, I'm not anti-man. I mean, my best friend is a man. I mean, we go on wonderful trips together sometimes. Um, and his husband is a wonderful man too. It's not about that. It's about, when you reach this point, it's a really good time before shit hits the fan to figure out, who are your people?
Yeah.
Who are the people who are going to show up and go, what is it that we need to do right now? Do we need to get you into the shower? Or do we need to go do the groceries? Like, what is going to help bring you back up on your feet? Not, you're failing at this, you're failing at that, you didn't show up for this, you're not, blah. So the homework, Laurel, that I know that you ask of people to do before shit hits the fan is maybe take a survey of your own life and see, as you helped me get a new will, but also, who are the people who are going to be here and who will understand, you know, I haven't had a shower in 5 days. cool. I'm coming over. What can I help you with? Like small little demonstrations of friendship and love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
do a
it's
lot.
just honesty, right? It's pure honesty.
Honestly.
And vulnerability.
And I think it's Dina Bell LaRoche, part of our group.
She's coming on soon. She is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it that she says? You know, like self-care is a moral imperative. Just this little beautiful little saying about it being a moral imperative, taking care of yourself. And it is really hard to create those boundaries, but everything, like you start losing. I know I've just lost a sense of who I am. And I don't want to work just to exist. I want to work to live. And I'm not living anymore. And I've lost myself or been lost for so long. It's like, I don't even know who I am anymore. What is it that makes me happy?
Yeah.
So next time I go on a 20,000 kilometer journey, you
I'm
come
in.
with me.
I'm in.
You come with me. 'Cause I can
yeah.
tell you, I'm pretty sure now who I am, and I'm not sure some people are going to like it.
Well, Laurel, I mean, we're at the end of our show, but before we go, you know, we've talked about lots of things. Thank you for being so open and sharing everything. Can you, or do you have any advice for caregivers or patients? Because you've been on both sides, that you know, feel, you know, I was gonna say feel the need to tell us, but like what comes up for you when you think about advice for caregivers and patients?
Know when enough is enough. Know that respite is a vital, important part in any caregiver's journey, no matter what the disease, what the situations or circumstances are. Whatever that respite looks like for you could be very different from others, but is a really critical component. And that's a big worry for me, is like if someone's a caregiver, who's taking care of the caregiver? And while you're in that role, you have to find that balance to make sure that you are taking care of you first and foremost. Because if you don't, then that person's not going to end up being where they want to be, or you have to put them in care. Like there's only so much we can do as human beings, but just don't, it's not worth killing yourself over or making yourself sick. And I know that in my early days with my children being so young, when I was 38, being diagnosed with breast cancer, really aggressive breast cancer, that part of why I got sick was because I was trying to do it all, trying to run a company, be involved in politics, take care of my mother-in-law, not having those supports. Did I make myself sick? I don't know, but I'm not willing to risk it again. But respite is a really important thing. And I've been working on the caregiver strategy with the Canadian Center for Caregiving Excellence for over a year now. And that's been really inspiring, important. So the government and people are trying to do things to recognize the underground economy of caregiving. And I don't think people realize the added value of what we're doing to augment the care of our seniors and our loved ones.
Oh, the healthcare system would collapse without caregivers.
It's insane.
It would collapse.
Well, yeah.
Well, thank you, Laurel, for coming on. We love seeing you. Thank you for sharing so openly with us. And to those who are watching, please remember, like, subscribe, and get notified. That helps us, help you, and we'll do some magic together. Until next time on the Inner Shift podcast, we'll see you soon.